Hey everyone, welcome back to Breaking Barriers Now. I am your host, Jody Watkins, and today I have my guest, Dr. Meg Longyear. She has such a great story from what I can tell already, and I can't wait to share that with everyone else. And she is here in my new office, which I'm grateful, so grateful to have. And so we were able to link up in person because she is here in Jacksonville, Florida, along with me. So this is the beginning of a great relationship. I already know it. And I'm just grateful that you were able to come today. So thank you for showing
me.
up.
Thank you.
All right. So basically, we're just going to get started and, just talk about, a little bit of your backstory and kind of what led you. And I'm going to let you just talk about, what you're doing now and how that impacts other people. And we'll make sure that we share, how people can contact you as well.
Awesome.
So thanks again for showing up.
Absolutely.
Let's just get started. You can share as much as you want, as little as you want. It's totally up to you. Share your whole life story in 40 minutes or less.
Awesome.
No, I'm just playing. No, but I do appreciate you showing up.
Absolutely.
And just from what I read, I'm excited to hear what you have to say.
Yeah.
So the floor is basically yours.
Cool. Well, I definitely am thrilled to be able to be here and be able to talk to you and share my story. For most of my life, I felt very, I didn't feel like I had a purpose. I didn't feel like I had a point to being live. I didn't feel like there was a reason I was supposed to be here. And through this whole journey, I've realized so much that stepping into those hard places and that vulnerability of talking about what my, life story has been and what I've dealt with has helped me connect with other people that I realize, oh, wow, there's others out there that feel the same way as I do. And they're in that same struggle. So not feeling that, shame or embarrassment of, I'm all alone. No, you're really not. And the more I work with people and meet people and share my story, people are coming around and saying, I feel that way. How can I get help? Great. Let's heal everyone. We all need to raise that vibration and, share the word. So I had a great upbringing. I have two wonderful parents and a little brother, and we grew up in Michigan, in Detroit, Michigan area. And I just always struggled with feeling depressed and anxious, and I didn't understand it. I didn't know who to ask for help. Went to therapy a lot. After getting into high school and having, just a lot of more intense feelings, getting into some trouble and stuff like that, just really destructive behaviors and stuff. Now I can look back and realize I was just screaming for help. I just didn't know how to ask for it because I felt broken.
Were you in therapy in high school?
I started, I think around my senior year. I think, like coming into my senior year, I think is when I started therapy.
How did you feel about that? Because I talk about how important therapy's been in my life, but of course I didn't go until later in life. And I try to also share that with other parents, who have teens and, kids who are, they're seeing things that we never saw growing up, that I never saw growing up.
Absolutely.
They have technology now. I didn't have that growing up.
Oh, right.
So what was that journey like, just, being in therapy in high school? Was there any stigma behind it? Anybody were you made fun of? Like, what did you do?
I always felt like everything had to be kind of hidden. We didn't talk about problems. Like my parents were good about being supportive, but it was like, you just don't share things like that.
Yeah.
Like that shows that, and not that I was taught that, or if that was just an internal thing or if society, but I always felt like I was broken. Like I had to go to therapy because I was so sad all the time and I couldn't figure out why. Like I had a great life. There was nothing that you could say, well, this happened, so here's the result of that, and you're sad. It didn't make sense. So it was just, this hopelessness. And so therapy was helpful, but I never remembered, like I probably went to 4 different therapists, didn't share. I don't think maybe my best friend in school knew, but I didn't share that with people.
Okay.
But like 4 or 5 different therapists until I found somebody when I was about 20, 21 years, 22, 23 years old, something like that. Actually, I think I was older than that. I think I was in my mid 20s at that point. So I'd been going for a while, just trying to find people that I felt some kind of relief at the end. Like I felt like I just kept talking about the same things that just didn't resolve or get better. It was just talking about it all the time. And so, it led my passion to therapy and psychology and mental health. So I wanted to do that when I got out of high school, and I studied psychology for a while until I realized I didn't want to be sitting there listening to someone like me coming in and dumping all their problems. Like, would I be able to handle that as a doctor? because that's a lot.
That is.
So I dropped that career and then decided I wanted to do this. And I, studied law enforcement and went all the way through that until about the police academy. And then was like,
Wow.
I'm not going to see babies being born in the back of cars as much as I'm going to be seeing bad guys and bad things. And I already have a problem with being sad. So, okay, now I'm feeling even more defeat. Another career that I feel like I can't do this either. What am I supposed to do? So eventually just settled for a bachelor's degree in business administration, which is so not my world.
You sound like me.
Just get something, right? I just want to be done with school.
I want to commend you real quick. I'm going to stop you real quick. I want to, because I think sometimes we tell our stories and we forget to kind of focus on the great things that can come about. Like, you were so aware.
Yeah.
And that, I want to commend you for that, because I'll be honest with you, I wasn't. I was really good at compartmentalizing, and I just kept pressing. And so that's why I didn't fall apart until my 40s. But I was falling apart up until then.
Yeah.
I wasn't even aware. I was so used to just like, whatever, keep pressing.
Yep.
So I want to acknowledge you for that.
Well, thank you.
And for anybody out there who's listening, if you're aware of those things, there's something that's trying to talk to you, just listen.
Yes.
Don't be like me. Don't. And I mean, I'm grateful that I did finally seek the help, but that's what I love about talking to other people now is just like, hey, you don't have to wait this long.
No.
And so the fact that you were aware, and yeah, like I went and got my business degree too. And I think sometimes it's because we don't know what we want to do, right?
Just get something with all these credits.
But I also want to acknowledge you for the awareness of knowing you wouldn't be able to show up for people.
Yep.
Because I didn't know that until later on when I was doing the kind of more life coaching and health coaching stuff. And then I was getting triggered through other people's stories.
Yep.
And that actually was what led me down the path of where, I need help, because I didn't know. So I just wanted to stop you real quick and just acknowledge you for that, because that's huge in itself. And, for anybody out there that's listening, that awareness is huge. So if you have that awareness, kudos to you. Not just go, find the right person for you to help you through it.
Absolutely. That trigger word is a big word in my world of what I do today. And that brought so much awareness to, now I can look back at this experience and be like, wow, okay, all of this that happened was setting me up for where I needed to be today. But if you had told 20-year-old me that, I would have been like, screw you. You don't know what you're talking about.
Or probably ran the other direction, right?
Pretty much. All my friends are like getting married and they're, doing careers and they have everything, like they just know. And I'm sitting here thinking, I've just stopped 3 different careers because I don't feel like I could be present in the way that I would want someone to show up for me, or it's going to make me too sad and too upset that might make me even worse than I am right now. So, and that just kind of continued. And I've always been in the healthcare field. My mom's an oncology nurse. So I was very much raised on like that Western medicine kind of mindset. So I was a pill popper with tummy aches. Nexium was my best friend. I was on antidepressants for my anxiety and depression, especially when I started therapy. That made me suicidal. So luckily I got off of those quickly. But nothing just seemed to fit. Nothing seemed to work. Everything was just, it was hard and it didn't make sense. So fast forward through going to the therapy and doing all this stuff. The last therapist actually that I saw, we got into talking about my drinking, and I was a pretty hard partier for a long time, which now I can look back at and realize, well, yeah, because you're trying to close off something, you're trying to quiet it. Yes, you don't want to deal with it. So I need to quiet those voices. I need that to just stop. Even though I'm sure it made me a train wreck, and thank God Facebook wasn't a thing back in the day.
Right?
Oh my God. I'm so thankful.
So this month is your 15-year anniversary. Yeah. Because I saw that and I was just like,
Yes.
So we are recording this in January. So it's our 15-year anniversary for being sober.
Still can't believe it's been that long.
I'm very interested. If you're open to it, please share a little bit of that journey and what it looked like.
It was supposed to be just 1 year we were going to try. So my now husband, who you'll get to chat with here in the
he's going to be on
upcoming,
too.
Yes. I had gone, I remember after a therapy session, I went and I talked to him and I told him that I realized something in therapy today with this therapist and I need to stop drinking. Like, I'm causing a lot of my issues. Probably makes sense to, a lot of people hearing, like, you put that together. It didn't make sense to me at the time, but it was like she smacked me upside the head with a shovel and I was like, oh my gosh, I have to stop drinking. And I had family and friends that had been telling me like very gently and sweet, like maybe you just know, maybe just don't drink tonight and whatnot, because it was an everyday thing.
That's good.
It was very destructive, but I ignored them. Now I'm hiding it from everybody.
Right.
Like now I'm not going to let people know. And so I told him, I said, I'm going to quit drinking. And we had just started kind of dating. So I'm like, I understand if you don't want to stay with me. I need to do this though. I need to kind of get my life in. I need to try this and see if this can help.
Yeah.
And he's like, all right, I'll try it with you. Let's do it for a year and see what happens.
Yeah.
And oh my gosh, it was the hardest thing. It was the hardest year staying away from alcohol. He worked in a managed bar, so obviously that was a lot harder in that realm. But it was like, okay, we have like, we're going to hold each other accountable. And we're going to do this for 1 year. And we made it maybe about halfway through and realized we can't ever go back to what we were doing because we are struggling just to get day through day not drinking. So clearly there's a problem and we have to be stronger than this.
Yeah.
So we've just held each other accountable, and we've changed. Our lives have been, obviously, I mean, our lives are completely different than they were, but that gave me the freedom, that gave me the clear thoughts, that gave me you have a problem and you can work on it and you can get better. And I started meeting new people that didn't drink or had quit drinking. A lot of my friends that had stopped drinking wanted to do more things because we didn't always have to go to the bar every night. We could go do something fun.
Exactly.
So it
That's
actually
awesome.
became a little bit easier once we kind of moved out of state, started meeting different people. And really it was when he started chiropractic school, and it was like, would we have done that if we were still drinking? Probably not.
Yeah.
15 years from if we hadn't quit drinking, we'd probably still be in Michigan. We'd probably still be doing the same things.
Yeah.
It just life would have just stayed the same. So it's been freeing, but it is definitely still, there's those triggers that when I have a lot of stress, when I get really overwhelmed, all I want to do is just drink and just turn it all off. And it's like, nope, you have to change the way that you're thinking. Go do some of the techniques that I use in practice now. You're aware
Listen
there's a
to
trigger.
your own advice.
Yes.
Yes.
There's that trigger. It's telling you something. Listen, and I've gotten better. So it's definitely been easier, but I love now being able to help people that are in that boat that think I can never stop drinking. Yeah, you can. If I could do it, anybody can do it.
That's what we were just talking about that earlier. We were having this conversation before we started recording, and I was like, there's absolutely nothing that I'm doing that nobody else can do because I'm not superhuman. You're not superhuman. Nope. We just made a choice.
Yep.
Right. And I love that you made that choice, but I also love that you guys realized that you had to separate yourself from what was there. It's interesting because a lot of people think I stopped drinking because I got into bodybuilding. That's not the case. There was actually an occurrence that happened, and it woke me up, and I was like, I need to be able to know what I'm doing when I'm out and about.
Yep.
And it was unfortunate, but it also it was that wake up call.
Sometimes we get those, sometimes we need it.
Yeah. So that's why I don't drink. And that's why, the people that know me, they know that now, but other people, they just think, oh, because you're in fitness.
Yep.
That's all. And I'm like, no, there's a backstory.
Yep. There's a lot.
Backstory.
You usually see these smiling faces, and like I always say that in our bios and write-ups. I've always been that smiley person. I've always been called that smiley person, but it was like inside it was just this sadness, this deadness, what you look at somebody doesn't necessarily mean that sometimes we get really good at putting up a cover of how upset we are inside and how much we're hurting. And I think that's where this passion of, people with their emotional health and being able to sense that. I mean, everybody can walk into a room and tell if everybody in there is angry. You feel that, you know that energy.
Yes.
Well, we also have that ability to be able to kind of pick up on that when you're around somebody. And sometimes somebody just holding their hand or giving them a hug and just saying, is everything okay? Or do you need something? It can open up a whole story that you can help connect with your connections, connect people where they can go to help with whatever they're dealing with.
Yeah.
I think we need to, be more aware of that and with people just
paying attention.
Yep.
Yeah. And it is huge. And we do have to pay attention. And most of us, I think, are able to, I always say, put on the mask. And when 2020 hit and everybody was wearing masks, I was learning how to take mine off.
Yeah.
And so I struggled with having to put a mask on. Even though that mask was physical and mine was mental, I didn't want to wear a mask anymore because I was taking it off.
Try to free
and
yourself.
So that's what people were like, oh, you're trying to give. No, I'm not trying to give anybody. I don't have COVID. How can I give COVID? Right. But no, it's because I worked really hard and I'm trying to work hard to unveil who I am.
Yeah.
So don't tell me I have to cover it back up.
Let me shine. Let me show it to the world.
No, and it took me a long time, but I think that's so important, and it's so key for people to understand. And like I tell people now, I'm like, when I was in my best physical shape, I was mentally falling apart. I didn't even know it. Because I smiled and everything's great. No,
but
it's
inside,
not.
absolutely
No, it's
incongruent.
not.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about your journey, because you said you went to business school. And then, okay, so how did you finally figure out what you were going to
do? Just shows that everything's happening. You just have to be waiting for the signs and
Yes.
just trust your instincts.
Yes.
So while my husband was in chiropractic school, when it was, first he had been exposed to this technique in his first trimester in school. They have what they call like club day, and you go check out all the clubs because you're new and you want to find out all the different things that you could get, involved in while you're in school for the time. And he did this thing called NeuroEmotional Technique. And I just remember him coming home, and it tells me about how, they made you stretch and touch your toes. And then they did this technique on me, and they're pushing on my arm. And mind you, I have no holistic background, very medical. So I'm like, they're pushing on your arm for what? Like, what's the purpose of that? I don't understand. No anatomy background, nothing. So I'm completely just like, and he said, and all of a sudden it came up to when I had my injury and I got really emotional and I started crying. And then it was like, okay. And then she finished her thing. And then she said, now touch your toes again. And I could get like a hand length further. And I'm like, what do you mean? Well, let's back up to the part that you were crying, because that's not, that's me. I'm the crier. Like, how did she get to that? Like, did you tell her about your injury? And he's like, no, she was just pushing on my arm and then something. And I'm like, I have to see somebody. Like, you have to find somebody. Yes. I want to go do that. So fast forward 3.5 years. One of his classmates says they were about to graduate. That week that they were about to graduate, he hooked me up with her, and I was so excited to try it. She was going to go sit for her certification, so I went and she worked on me for like an hour. And the thing with me, when I would cry, like if I saw a sad Hallmark commercial or pet commercial, it was like, it's going to last for 3 days that I'm in that sadness. Like
I used to be
that
like
pit.
That too.
Yeah. So you can understand that
Definitely.
feeling. Like you don't just cry and then you're just like, I'm going to go for a walk and I'll feel better. No, 3 days later, I may feel better.
Right.
But I'm going to be in this. So I avoided or sad situations for that reason.
Oh my gosh.
So she gets me crying, and I don't even remember what it was that came up. And all of a sudden it was like she flipped a switch and I didn't want to cry anymore. Like it turned off. Like it was a distinct shift.
Wow.
And I sat up. And she obviously didn't know me, so she didn't know my history. And I'm like, why did I stop crying? And she's like, well, you're finished processing it. And I'm like, what does that mean? Like, I don't understand. Like, that was a big event that I remember living through, and it felt so uncomfortable inside, and the pictures in my head. And then I stopped crying, and she did the test again, and I was better. And so we finished the session, and I just can't stop thinking about this. Like, that was so pivotal for me that crying stopped. Why? I don't understand why. So then when we moved and found that there were no NET practitioners within an hour of me, and I was still kind of the breadwinner at the time while he was starting up his practice, I can't take an hour or 2 or 3 really to go travel and do all this. So I just kept thinking about it. And I started getting ideas of like, gosh, could this, be spots in our body that, we're holding this stuff that maybe that causes stuff. Again, no anatomy background, just getting like thoughts,
It's crazy how true that is, though. Like
getting into
now
school.
That I know, and it's funny, I did have an anatomy background, but I never thought of like the mental health side of it because, like I said, I was hiding it, and I didn't even realize that was a thing.
You didn't want to pull that in.
I want to touch on real quick before you keep going. I want to touch on something you said earlier, where your antidepressants were making you more suicidal.
Yes.
I want people to hear that because a lot of people that know me understand that my nutrition background comes from helping my mom. Well, it's because she was on a ton of medications and her antidepressants were making her suicidal. And I said, there's got to be another way. And so I started taking pharmacology, I started taking nutrition, and that's what got me more into that. So I wanted to kind of go back to that real quick and just not grace over it too much, because there's a lot of people out there who, I don't want to use the wrong word. I don't want to say rely, so you guys don't hate me. I don't want to say rely on antidepressants, but just know that there's something deeper that you have to uncover and you have to heal through before any of those medications can actually help you.
They're flooding you with, those, with the things to help you feel better. And that's why I called them my happy pills. I called them my happy pills for 2 weeks. Oh my gosh, I felt amazing. And then one day I was staring at a building, and all I kept thinking at that red light is that I just need to gun it and I need to drive into that building. And I was completely, and I did start going, and then luckily snapped to and was like, what the heck, and pulled off just sobbing. And I'm like, I'm done with these. Like, it still gets me emotional, just like that moment of like, I could have driven into that building and ended my life. No, that is so not okay. So
Right.
that was the end of that. And, you know, then as I learned through school, you know, what it's actually doing, it probably wasn't a serotonin deficiency. It was probably more of a dopamine, but that, you know, you look at the research and you read that stuff, and it's just, it doesn't solve the problem. That's why we get a lot of patients that come in that want to get off their medications, but they don't want to go back to where they were.
Right.
So then we use these techniques, fire up areas of the brain that just weren't functioning at their best, to kind of help you through this stuff, so that you're not living the same life without the medication. You're living another life because you're not carrying all that baggage with you anymore.
She doesn't understand. My watch is talking to me. Sorry, guys.
Siri doesn't get it.
Siri doesn't get it.
Let's break it down.
No, I appreciate that. And I appreciate you letting me kind of go back. I didn't mean to kind of like, I hope I didn't mess you up too much. So we're going to fast forward again. So you moved here and there were no practices. So what did you start doing after that?
Yes, we were in North Carolina, and then we ended up moving to Atlanta. So my husband got a job at the chiropractic school there in Marietta, Life University. And when we got there, one of the first, like as they were opening this clinic up, this functional neurology clinic that focused more on like traumatic brain injuries and things like that, they had a lot of the students would come down because the practice was on campus. And one of the guys that came down was the president of the NeuroEmotional Technique club that they had on campus. And I just it ignited that fire again. Like it came back in full force. And I remember talking to some friends, and I'm like, I think this is a sign that like, I need to go learn this. Like, not only do I need to continue getting it, but I need to learn this. Like, I still can't stop thinking about it. And then as I started looking, there's practitioners in the area. I'm like, I can get this help. And I honestly, it's like I had blinders on. I don't really know how I got through the program. It was the hardest thing I've ever done aside from quitting drinking. But getting into school, just having that, you know, encouragement from my friends that yes, you went from being suicidal, being on medication, being sad and depressed, and having this glimmer of hope that there's something that could make a change, to somehow ended up in school and getting through the program. And I mean, emotions became my world. Like I could have chose therapy and it made it like a full circle from high school and gotten into, you know, be a therapist. But I learned along the way the power of the adjustment with my husband, that, you know, he's the science and I'm the woo woo. That's how we're very different. But the science behind the adjustment and how that's activating areas in your brain and giving this barrage of information to help wake up certain areas that may be a little more, you know, sluggish, dormant, too active. So how could I not go learn chiropractic? And I can do that with NET, which it was created by a chiropractor to begin with. But it was just so like easy decision. I literally, did we show up here for him and this job, or did we show up because I needed to go through this program? I mean, would we have moved again for me to go to chiropractic school? So I feel like that path started showing itself eventually. It took a while.
It does take a while,
right? Yes. And I was 36 when I went back to school. So, you know, I was already into a career as a paralegal, and, you know, it was, you know, like I'm the old one in school. Like there's all these little 20-year-olds that are coming out. I could be their parents, you know, like. That
sounds like me. I went to medical lab tech school and I was 36 and I was around like all these 18, 19, 20-year-olds.
I felt so old. They're going out partying.
I'm like, she called me her Air Force mom.
I love it.
She was 18. I could literally have been her mom.
Yep. Yeah, that's what I used to tell, and she would call me Grandma Megs because she'd text me at 9:00 at night asking about an exam or something, and I'm like, "Oh, sweetie, we're going to bed."
But that's the thing, though, and that's what I tell people: you're never too old to start a new
Never.
journey. And a lot of times, I know people that start businesses in their 60s. You're not dead.
No,
keep going. It doesn't matter. There's no age. There's no age cap. On purpose, and that's what I'm learning.
If you have a passion, go after it.
It's usually us that stop ourselves.
We are. We're the ones that put that rock up and say, "Oh, I can't do this. I'm fill in the blank excuse."
Exactly.
Well, I'm glad that I did it, and I'm glad that I went through it. It was hard, and I don't know that I'd ever want to go through that again. But I'm glad on the other side of it now. And then, you know, now with the practice that we have and what it's evolved into is just We're chiropractors, but I think, like I said, earlier when we were chatting, we don't see the back pain, neck pain kind of patients. Like, we're getting the tough cases in. We're getting the people that are coming in that want to get off their medications, the people that are coming in with seizures, traumatic brain injuries, all of that. But my husband and I both had our own unique journeys that we realized there was so much more that we could be doing for healing. So for us to be able to come together and build what we're building and have a vision that we want to have clinics like this set up everywhere. We get patients in all the time from other states that come in for a week intensive just to try to make as much neuroplastic change, release as many emotional stressors as we can from the body so that you can express a more vibrant you. It's just blocks in the way. We just got to figure out ways to move things out of the way so that your body knows what to do. It knows how to be healthy. It knows you got to cut. You're not sitting there telling it to do anything. You just got to get the thorn out of the way.
Exactly.
So it can do what it needs to do.
Yeah, I love that. Definitely. And that's huge. I didn't really understand just how important the chiropractic side of things. I never went to a chiropractor when I was younger. I mean, that wasn't a thing when I was young. But when I did have to start going back in 2019, after I moved back to Jacksonville, that's when I started doing the research and listening, because we would have conversations, and I had no idea just how important that was to neurology. Because, I went into like the nutrition side of it and the physical health side of it, but I never understood just how important the chiropractic side of it is.
Yep.
And so that's what I tell people too. Like, I have like 10 people I go to, you guys. Like, there's not one person.
Nope.
There's not one person who can help you actually get through. And sometimes it is doing these different, types of therapies that can help you, because people go to mental health therapists, right? But we also have to incorporate things like I started doing cupping, right? Like for release of the tension, because we hold our stress up in here.
Yep.
And so now I'm interested in learning that. And it's interesting how we have to go through our journeys. Do you feel like because you can relate to people, even if they don't know it, do you feel like you're kind of more of an empathetic person?
Oh, I'm totally an empath. Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And I've had to learn. I do remember in school, because I worked on a lot of like teachers and professors and such, because I am just very loud and vocal, and I truly feel that this is my purpose, is to share. This technique worked for me. I did all the self-help books. I did tapping. I did EMF or EFT. I did all therapy, all the things. It all helps. This changed my life. And when I learned about the neurology and the anatomy, and you look at like acupuncture and the meridian points and how each organ holds emotions, and you're actually bringing this technique, brings that mind and body awareness. And now we're in a safe place where we can process something that wasn't safe at 8 years old to process, but now I'm safe. I know I'm sitting here, I'm in a safe surrounding, I'm bringing that picture into my mind, I'm feeling it in my body, and I'm letting it go. And that awareness and being able to let go, finish processing it and let it go.
That part.
Huge. Yes.
That let go part. Because that was going to be my next question. And I'm really interested in this technique. I might have to come see you guys.
You should.
That's one thing I haven't tried yet. But the empathy, that's what I was kind of, because I always say I'm an empath too, because, when people are talking, usually if you can relate to them, you kind of feel what they're feeling, right? So one of the things I had to do, and I'm not sure if you had to work through this too, is I had to learn how to not only let my own stuff go, but let their stuff go.
Oh yeah.
Because I would carry their stuff. Yeah. How did that work for you? What was that journey like?
A lot of things. And I actually teach a lot of my patients is because so many of them come in and it's like they're taking on their children's stuff, their spouse's stuff, their work stuff. And it's like, no. So how I look at it is like, if you're that bright light and you're the helper, then everybody sees it. And when they need something, they come and as a doctor, and this is where I kind of got some guidance, and luckily have some great mentors that were able to kind of guide us through it. You can't be giving of your energy. You've got to be finding ways to keep your boundaries. I'm still empathetic with people, but I don't sympathize anymore because your journey is your journey. And I wouldn't change anything that happened through my journey, because I wouldn't be who I am today. And whereas there's a lot of people that, again, we all have choices. We all have a choice in how we do things. And sometimes it takes people a little bit longer. And I see that some people, they get through things that they come in, their goal is to, you know, be able to fly in a plane again and not have anxiety and have to take medication. Great goal to have. Let's work on that. So we work on that. Being afraid of planes. Where does that come up? What event does that bring back in your past? Let's work through it. Some people get through it really quick. Some people are so used to holding on to and not feeling that they have that value of being that self-worth they hold this stuff. They don't want to lean into it. It's not safe yet. And so it takes a little bit longer. But it's been amazing over the years watching how people that didn't think that there was any help for them. And I'm like, well, I got helped, so I don't believe that statement. Let's work through, but let's realize that everyone has their journey. So I'm not going to sit there and be like, oh, poor you. That was your journey. And whatever you're here for on this earth, whatever you're supposed to share with these podcasts and share with the people that you connect with and the people that you're helping to heal and work out and the nutrition, you have a purpose. And I believe completely with every fiber in my body, so does everybody else on this planet. So what is it that's holding you back? That's where I get annoying, because I'll hear people sit there and say, oh, well, I can't, or, you know, that just,
Me too.
And now I'm going to call you out on it
Here.
and be like, okay, so there's some fear going on there. So let's talk about why. And that's, you know, come on into the office, let's work on that. Because that's limiting beliefs. That came from somewhere. Babies don't come in with limiting beliefs. So that's an established pattern that we know is in that survival part of our brain, that limbic brain. So when we're in that part of our brain, everything's danger. Everything is, you know, we keep ourselves more protected. We're not in those higher centers of our brain that allow us to see that tomorrow's a new day. I can do things. I can, you know, it's bigger picture. So we need to get out of what is it? Let's figure it out, work through it, let it go, and then watch yourself thrive. Watch yourself be able to do these things that you would put limitations on yourself. And change that change that pattern.
That's interesting. And so I mentor some other personal trainers too, and I teach them how to utilize the online space, just because that's what I've been doing for the last, you know, however long. And that's because I didn't have enough time in the day to work with people in person. And so I had to learn how to leverage the online space. But when I speak to them, it's interesting because I had my own limiting beliefs, right? So it took me a really long time. Like people, even moving back to Jacksonville, people that know me now and knew me then, they're like, you're a totally different person. Like I talked to somebody the other day and she was saying that. And I love hearing that though, because now I can tell other people that. And I'm like, hey, I see that you have these limiting beliefs, but that's because you don't know the possibilities of what's out there. And that's okay. And it can be scary.
Super scary.
Especially when you're used to coming from like the corporate world or the military, which is where I came from. And you're used to just being told what to do. And you have to do this. And then you get out and you're like, wait, like there's so many choices. What I don't know what to do,
it's
right?
Overwhelming.
And like she was saying, you guys, usually your purpose comes with your story. And that's what I've learned. It sounds like that's what you've learned.
Absolutely.
I'm interested to see what your husband's gonna say, because I'm sure he's gonna have something to say on that.
Oh yeah.
But that's why we do these things, and that's why we share our stories, because anybody out there who's listening, you have no limits except for the ones you place on yourself. And that's what I say now, because I know that. So I love that you finally were open to your true purpose in life.
Absolutely.
And I'm very interested to see this, because like I said, I've never heard of it. And so it's interesting. I went through the EMDR therapy, but I'd be interested to see how this kind of coincides, you know, because that did help me release a lot of trauma and burden and, you know, going through that. But I'm interested to see how what you guys are doing.
And that's what a lot of patients that come in, when an event will come up and they're like, I've worked on this for like 10 years. I've processed through that. And I'm like, okay, maybe you have, but your body's indicating that there's a stressor here. So let's just kind of figure out. And then all of a sudden, boom, the tears start, they start sweating again. There's that physiology, your body's reliving this memory. So clearly there's still some stress that's hanging out in the body. So now we're going to process through that. And they're frustrated. Like, well, but why didn't that help? Why didn't that fix it? Well, there's no one fix for all. I'm not saying that NET is the end all be all, but it's not therapy. So we're not sitting there hashing out all of your problems. I have a lot of therapists that I co-manage with, patients with, because they like to talk. So cool, let's bring up something, process through it. Now go talk to the therapist about that event, because that can be so healing. But when we're talking through things, we're using that higher center of our brain. We're making logic of it. We're trying to make sense of it. But that limbic brain does not, it's just survival. It's just to keep us till tomorrow. So whatever, if you were bullied at 8 years old, it was not safe being on the playground. It wasn't safe being in that situation. So you may have rationalized, well, I'm over that now, but that part of the brain is still holding on to it. So by bringing that awareness back to it, letting yourself see that memory, holding on to these specific points that connect with the organs in the body, and allowing yourself to breathe, give yourself that space to just in a safe space, and then you're freeing your body of it. You're letting that stress go. So it's huge. Like you were saying with like women holding on the stuff up here, body entries. Like if you have a shoulder that you've been going to the chiropractor and you've been getting it checked, you're adjusting, it feels better for a little while. I'm going to check it for an emotional stress. Because a lot of times, you know, we're holding these different stressors, and then, I mean, it's amazing seeing people that all of a sudden that range of motion comes back and they're like, I've been able to do that forever. Well, there was an emotional stressor. We know nutrition plays a piece in that. The structure plays a piece. Well, the thoughts do too. It's all part of that, you know, that pyramid. So, you know, we have to address all those different things and literally let your body let go of it. Don't hold on to it anymore.
I love that. And I love that you pointed that out, because that's something I was talking about just earlier. I have conversations all the time, and I'm sure you do too, but that's one of the things that I said. I always know when I'm more stressed because my body's holding on to more pain.
Pain.
And so it's interesting. I went to a physical therapist back, I think it was 2020. And we actually were, I had a good friend of mine. She was living with us with her 2 children. And not to say that was necessarily a stressful situation, but we didn't have the room in our house really. They were living in my daughter's room. And so my daughter, you know, she would talk to me, and so I was literally carrying everything for everyone. And when I started going to him, one of the things he said is, he was like, "Are you stressed?" And I was like, "No." Right? Like, that's all right. That's like,
I'm fine.
No, I'm good.
I'm
like,
totally fine.
Falling apart, right? Like,
I'm good.
No, I'm good. But one of the things that he pointed out to me is, he was like, "You are carrying stress." And we started talking about it. And like I said, I'm versed in anatomy. So when we actually started having that conversation, and I started actually remembering, like, oh yeah, this does have something to do with it. I was just like, oh my goodness. So now when my body, you know, because I do still have pain in my body and stuff like that, but when it starts to worsen, I'm like, okay, I gotta calm down. I need to go to the beach, or I need to, wherever my happy place is, right? So what, you know, because a lot of people don't want to talk about their stuff, right? I was one of them. Like, my husband was like, "You didn't talk to me about this stuff." That's because you don't know how to open me up. She did. She was very versed in that. So what do you do when someone comes to you and maybe they don't even know what they're getting into, or they don't really want to open up? Like, what are some of the things that you do to start that process?
That's why we rely on the muscle test. So I have patients, and especially like, I wish it was around when I was a kid, but I didn't realize it. I wish it had been around when I was a teenager. So it would have made a lot of, you know, help. And
has it really been around that long? Like,
Dr. Walker.
Well, I don't want to say that long. You're not that old, but
42.
No, we're young. I don't know what you're talking about.
Exactly. You're only as young as
you're right behind me. So
I think it was. I know it was in the 80s. And I think the seminars, I'd have to check. I don't remember exactly when the seminars started getting taught, but he kind of fell into it, which is, you know, how most people kind of fall into these things, you know, when you try it. He had just adjusted a woman, and she sat up after her adjustment and made a comment. You know, they were talking about an accident she'd been in, and she was saying how, you know, I feel a little tension, a little tightness. Are you sure you got everything? And so he checked her again, and he's like, yeah, how are you subluxated again? Like, she didn't get up, she didn't fall, she didn't do anything. She just thought about something. And then was like, we need to adjust you again. Like, that, what is that? So he had her just think about that fear, you know, of that car accident, and adjusted her again, and then had her sit up, and she noticed that, you know, obviously the pain had gone away and she felt better and more mobility, but she also noticed she wasn't as fearful as she had been. So like, sometimes if somebody comes in and they just have something that they know they're upset about, a breakup or a death in the family, and they don't really want to talk about it, but they're in that space, you can see that physiology, their pupils are blown out, their, you know, shoulders are up to your ears. Just think about that while we adjust you and put that impulse into your spine and allow that to move, you know, in your brain, and let go of some things. So I use the adjustment because it's not just a chiropractic technique. There's medical doctors that do it, all the medical doctors actually that are doing all the research. It's mostly at the seminars, it's chiropractors and therapists.
Okay.
So it's fantastic because
Yeah.
they're the mind docs and we're the body docs. So we get to share things with each other and communicate. Some of my favorite NDT practitioners are the mind docs. They're, they look at things a lot differently than, we are looking at the body and the anatomy.
Right.
But I love that I get to adjust while people are, processing. And I get a lot of feedback from patients that, by using a device, this little activator to stimulate segments of the spine that are correlated to those organs, that they get that deeper release. Like people feel, like I was right, I could feel it, but it was like I couldn't quite, it was there, and then you adjusted and it was like it just exploded, and I just felt like they may burst into tears, or it just was like, a sigh of relief. And it's like, that just shows the power that we're putting in when we give that impulse into the spine, especially when you're remembering something and going through something that was hard for you.
Yes.
It's not always a big trauma, like little things. You think about things that you were upset about at 8 years old may not be things that now you think are a big deal, but at 8 years old, it was crushing to your world. You got a bad grade on a test and your friend made fun of you, and maybe you just didn't finish processing that, but you still remember it and you can still recall it. That's a stressor in your system. It's not serving you. It's just keeping you small. It's keeping you feeling like something's wrong, something's bad, something's fearful, danger. And that's not thriving. That's not health.
Right.
So being able to kind of go through, and sometimes people don't want to talk. I have a lot of teenagers that come in that they don't want to talk about things. Super. So I just need you to get that picture. It's not talk therapy. So I don't need to know everything. I'm looking, I'm muscle testing, but I'm also watching the affect on the face. I'm watching their eyes and their pupils. I'm watching how they're responding when I'm asking. So can you remember a time where, when you were, 10 years old, where you were feeling, anger? And you just watch like the affect, like how did you know that?
Right.
Cool. Stay in that space. You're already there. I can see the tears welling up in your eyes. Just stay with that picture and that feeling, and let's just process through that. So I don't need to know the whole backstory. Sometimes, it's cool to, get a little bit of guidance, but for the most part, let's just get to what's bothering your system and let it go. Think about it, feel it, and just breathe. And then they sit up, and it's like, next couple days as you're processing can be a little, uncomfortable. Sometimes it feels like you just dropped 1,000 pounds off your shoulders and you feel free.
That mental weight.
Exactly. Like,
huge.
I don't have all this holding on to me.
Yes.
And then
that's how mental weight can take you down more than physical weight can most of the time.
Oh my gosh.
We carry, there's people that weigh, 500, 600 pounds, but when you have 1,000 pounds of mental weight, then and there's the problem too. When you have physical weight, everybody sees it, right?
You don't see the mental
You don't
stuff.
see the mental.
Yep.
So nobody knows that you're falling apart except for you.
Yep.
Nobody knew I was falling apart, and I didn't even know until later, right? And so that's the key, where you said something about paying attention. And that's one of the biggest things that I had to learn too, is we have to pay attention.
Yep.
Because people will tell us things with their eyes or their facial expressions. But we have to be paying attention or we'll miss the mark.
Absolutely. So. Listen to your body too. We talk about that all the time. It didn't just come out. Like, this is stuff that's been out there for years. We've got a poster that we have up in our waiting room. Half the time I walk out to grab a patient and they're staring at it crying. And I'm like, what's wrong? They're like, my hips are the problem. And this thing says it's because I'm not moving forward, or that it's because there's a resistance to move forward. And I'm like, see, the body doesn't lie to us.
Right.
It's giving us guidance into where we're holding on to things. So let's figure out what that is and let's let go of it. It's just
I am
so
so
powerful.
interested to just learn more about this, like even for my own personal whatever, but also to be able to share more with people out there, because I think this is something, and it might even be a missing link for me too, but I think this is definitely a missing link for other people.
For sure.
And you guys, there's a ton of stuff out there. And the mental health stigma, we got to get rid of it.
Absolutely.
There's, I had to hide a lot of things too when I was younger. Like, you can't tell everybody what's going on at home, whatever.
Yep.
And then I got in the military and it was like, shut up and color, right? It's like the same thing.
Yep.
And I was in a male dominated career field, and I was already, I'm a female, I'm in this male dominated career field. I can't show emotion. And so I just got taught to compartmentalize, to swallow it, to whatever. I never went to mental health because there's a stigma behind it. But you guys, we got to get rid of that. Because at the end of the day, we are all going through something.
Everybody.
We are all going through something. And there's absolutely nothing that should stop us from being able to ask for help. So,
and it's a lot of those programs that, we learn over our lifetime is we don't want to burden people. We don't feel worthy to ask for help and stuff like that. And that's a lot of what I felt too. If I saw my parents were going through something hard, and me being the oldest, and my brother had some stuff that he was going through at a young age. So I think I just kind of learned that, it's not okay to tell people or try to ask for help because you're being burdensome. Nobody taught me that. That's why like when you'll have a bunch of different kids
teaches us that,
totally reinforces it.
So many people, even with me, and like what I do, it's like, well, I don't want to bother you, I don't want to burden you, and I'm like, why did I tell you were burdening me? I told you could reach out. Like I might not get right back to you, but you're not burdening me. Like I give you my phone number for a reason. Exactly. If I didn't want you to be able to reach out, I wouldn't give you my phone number.
Absolutely.
So, oh my goodness.
It's a huge thing. And I tell people that constantly because they'll sit there and say, how do you listen to this all day, every day? And like, don't get me wrong. Like it's hard because as much as somebody gave me some crap for, when you go see Dr. Mike in our office, you're having fun in the back. When you come see me, you're crying. Wow. So it's like my room is very
interesting how everybody's so different.
Oh, and the treatments are so different, and not everyone cries. Some people you get what we call them armpit tears, because you just get really hot and sweaty as that physiology is releasing from your body. But I want people to cry. I want them to lean into it and let it go. You won't cry forever.
Right.
But if you're a crier like I was, I don't cry anymore when I do this technique, but I also can read old journal entries from when I was like 19, 20 years old, and I don't know who that girl is anymore.
Yeah.
Like, same. I want to hug her. I'm so sorry you had to go through all that, but thank you for this experience that I get to be here today.
Right.
But that's what I get to share with people when they're sitting in front of me. Like, I don't want to burden you, and I don't want to, and this must be the worst story that you've ever heard. And like, and it's like, no, I have stories that can make your toes curl. And just, wow, some of the stuff that people deal with. So that's been very therapeutic for me, that all this time I thought I was broken, nobody could help me. And I realized we're all sitting in this pit together, pick what it is that you're dealing with.
Yes.
But there's help and there's hope. And hope is something that people just need to it's hard to keep that, especially when you have something chronic going on.
Yes.
But there is always hope, and I will stand beside that, and I will tote my flag, and I will say, if you feel like you don't have any hope, then you need to get into my office, and let's do some work, and let's work through some stuff that you're kind of holding on to, and release that, because everybody has potential. You just got to get some of these blocks out of your path, the things that are holding you back, whatever that may be. Sometimes we don't know what it is. I didn't know what it was. I couldn't make sense of it, but now it's like, wow, okay, so I'm walking testimonial that you can think you're broken and then flourish and do things with your life. So I feel everyone has that potential.
Oh my goodness, I love this. I wish we could just continue this conversation forever. I definitely feel like this is the beginning of a great relationship, because I mean this stuff goes hand in hand. It's like you can't have, it's great if you got the nutrition and the working out and the health stuff down pat, but you have to have the physiological release of the pain and the trauma, and that's why it's so huge to just have different people that you can reach out to and to know about what's out there to help. Because I mean, this could even help people I work with.
Sure.
Because sometimes it's like I can get them so far, but I can't help them get past that one thing, or maybe 5 things that's actually keeping them from really just getting more into it. And so, like I said, I'm very interested in learning more about this and just seeing how maybe it can help me, so that way I can talk about it more freely too. Because I think we all definitely carry stuff. I mean, I have chronic pain in my body, so I would be interested to see like how, maybe I still am holding on to things. Who knows?
Sure. Well, luckily there's a documentary. I'll give you the address for that and everything, but you can look for it on
we'll
YouTube
make sure we
too.
Put that on here too. Okay.
It's called Stressed, which is such a perfect title, but it describes NET, goes into the history, goes into some of the research now that they've been doing to, with functional MRI. So it's, it's not just the emotional woo stuff that, my husband was joke about when I started learning all this. Like they're showing literal changes in the brain.
Wow.
With traumatic things that happen. They started the research with cancer patients getting that cancer diagnosis, going through the NET process. MRI, the functional MRI was, in the beginning. They read them their story that the patient had written up and looked to see what areas lit up. They did the technique, And then they put them back in the functional MRI to see, and those areas that once did light up were no longer lit up anymore. So you're literally changing your brain, that survival part of our brain, when we're releasing some of these things that we're holding in our body, but it's igniting. Every time somebody says a word, you think about it too, like in that situation, somebody could have been wearing a yellow shirt. Now, every time you see yellow shirts, you don't even realize that you're triggered, but you feel something, and now it's like, oh, I'm anxious every time I'm in grocery stores. And it's like, no, that guy's wearing that yellow shirt just triggered a memory from behind, back in your past that you never were able to work through because it wasn't safe at that moment. So it's things like that people just don't realize. That's what contributes to so much of this mental health, is that it just keeps compiling and we don't know how to get out from underneath it. But there's things that you can do, and EMDR is a great thing too. We do a little bit of something like that in our office too, because it's all about important. Releasing that brain.
Yeah, it's important. And one of the things that's interesting, what you just said, because sometimes we do carry things that we don't even totally remember. Because, we were kind of joking around about the mask thing earlier, and how, I told her, I was like, I was trying to take off my mental mask in 2020, but they were making me put a physical one back on, but I struggled with that. But then I started struggling in a different area where I started feeling like I was suffocating with the mask on. And it was interesting because that took me back to when I went in the military and we had to wear the gas mask. And I remember almost suffocating in the gas mask. Now, this was years ago, you guys. This was like, I don't know, I just went through it would have been my 23-year anniversary in the Air Force. So this was a long time ago, y'all. But that happened. And so, my therapist and I were trying to work through that. But she was like, if you don't remember, that's okay. We don't need to remember it, right? But it was in between, like, have I been suffocated before? I did almost drown before. So there's all these things that we don't really think about. And I honestly never would have thought about it. I was just getting upset that people were making me put on a mask.
And here it's triggering something.
But it was triggering me every time. And so I would try to put it, but because for some reason I was okay with it over my mouth, but when I put it over my nose, it's kind of, I don't like turtlenecks. There's like little things, and I'm just like, well, I don't understand what's going on. And then I felt like a bad person. Well, why can't I wear this mask like they want me to wear?
And then you start beating up on yourself and putting yourself down. Now you're driving that pattern that I'm a bad person because I'm not doing what I'm told.
Hence me going into therapy in 2021. Right? So it has like this, it all kind of incorporates together. And at the end of the day, it's just knowing what those triggers are. Because now that I'm more aware of them and you're more aware of yours, it's like now we can actually work through them. And they're not ever going to just go away. Like yours don't just go away, right? Like they're still there. But it's good to know that, and you were talking about the people you surround yourself with and stuff like that. Like I have different types of people in my life now where they support me through those times. And so I get to be that person that supports others through those times. And I think that's important too. It's like the people we surround ourselves with, but also being aware that it's okay to have the triggers, but not okay to necessarily hold on to them, like you were talking, and limiting ourselves because we have them. So
possibilities are endless.
As I tell people, I'm like, hey, I'm perfectly imperfect. Like that's my thing now.
Boring.
Like, but we all are, and that's what I'm learning more and more. A lot of people will put on, the mask and just go out into the world and nothing's wrong with me. And then they fall apart at home, or they're drinking, right? Or they're whatever that looks like. And so I think it's very important for us to just be more open to, hey, we're all going through stuff and it's okay. We can all support each other. And thank you so much for I want to acknowledge you for just opening up about your story and kind of what led you. And honestly, I mean, anybody that goes to you now, I would feel comfortable sending people to you because I know that it helped you. And so you can bring that to the table with other people. And I just think that's a beautiful journey.
All I want to do is give people hope. I looked for hope. I didn't know how to fix it. And somehow I got here. So I just want people to realize that there are different things that we just don't know about until we know about them. So share the word, and I will, till my dying day, be talking about this journey and how maybe that saves one person from wanting to, attempt. And, suicide or to think that, you know, they're not worthy, that they're not good enough, and holding them back from fulfilling their potential and doing something that is calling for them, that this planet needs to help raise this vibration so that there could be more love and more happiness. So
true.
So thank you for having me on. I'm very grateful to be here today.
Truly appreciative that you came, and, you know, in person too. And we got to do this in person and actually meet each other.
Yeah.
You guys, I want you to just kind of share with everybody, like, how can they contact you?
Absolutely. So on our website, it's brainoi.com. Our name of our company is Brain Optimization Institute. We'll kind of give you our bios. It talks about all the different techniques and things that we do in our office, as well as the email addresses and things like that that you can contact the office, or phone numbers and stuff like that. And then for people that are wanting a little bit more information about this technique, if you visit the website mindbody.com, there's videos on there. It gives a more of an explanation of kind of what the, you know, changes in the body and how, you know, it gives more. The documentary does the same. And I love the documentary. It's
and I'll make sure I have all this, you guys. Like, so if you go to the YouTube channel and get this video, I'll make sure I have it in that write up. And then when you go to listen to the podcast, all the information will be in there too. Cool. So everybody will have access to you. But thank you again for coming. I hope everybody got something out of this. Please share it with anyone out there that you feel like, you know, could gain some value from this. I think honestly, everybody in the world can gain some value from this. And definitely just know that there's a lot of stuff out there. There's a lot of people out in the world that actually, you know, we've gone through some stuff. And so that's why we're so passionate about helping other people. So thank you for tuning in. Thank you for listening. Again, my name is Jody Watkins. I'm the host of Breaking Barriers Now, and this is Dr. Meaghan Longyear. So again, this is the start of a beautiful relationship, and her husband will be here shortly too. And so I'm just grateful to be able to keep this going. I'm grateful for the amazing guests that I get to have. I'm grateful for the vision that came to me. And I honestly just kind of fail forward fast. I didn't really have it all together, and I didn't have a game plan. But I knew that this was on my heart, and I knew that sharing our stories is important because somebody out there needs to hear it. So I hope that you're one of those, or you know someone who needs to hear it, and please share this with them. So thank you again for tuning in. Have a blessed day, and we will see you next time.
Hey.